I spent the night sewing my daughter Zuri's wedding gown, each stitch a memory, each thread a promise. No rest, no pause. Just the steady whir of my mother's old machine and the first dawn light kissing the ivory lace. It wasn't couture. It was love made visible, soft tulle, salvaged pearls, and inside the lining, a scrap of my own wedding veil, so she would carry me with her unseen. When I carried it to her home, wrapped like a treasure, Zuri glanced once and sneered. "This looks like something a poor person would wear." Her friends tittered. Before I could speak, she snatched it and dropped it into the trash. "I'm not walking down the aisle like a seamstress." "Mom," the words stole my breath. I gathered my dignity from the floor and left before the tears fell. Outside, the sun burned, but I felt only cold. Days later, alone, I slipped back into her house while she was gone. The gown lay crumpled in the same bin, stained, humiliated but whole. I took it home. Under lamplight, I saw it still held every ounce of my devotion. Something shifted inside me, not rage, but a cold, steady resolve. I worked in secret, sleepless nights. Crystal flowers along the hem, vintage lace, layers of embroidery hiding notes, fragments of our story, my sacrifices, my mother's wisdom. The thread between mother and daughter only stretches, it never breaks. The dress transformed. So did I. On her wedding day at the Grand Magnolia Ballroom, I arrived unannounced in my simple cream dress, the restored gown folded in a linen bag. Zuri shone in Parisian lace, but her perfection felt hollow. At 10 o'clock, I stepped forward. The room hushed. Eyes turned. Zuri paled. I lifted the gown high. Lights caught the crystals like stars. "This is the dress you called trash?" I said calmly. "I rescued it. Not for revenge, but to remind you where you come from. Every stitch is sacrifice. Every bead a night I didn't sleep so you could dream bigger." Silence. Then applause, slow then swelling. Zuri sank to her knees, tears streaming. I approached, lifted her chin. "There is no shame in humble beginnings. The shame is forgetting who carried you to where you stand." I left through the ovation, the gown in my arms, dignity intact. 3 days later, Zuri appeared at my door, pale, holding the dress. "I found your notes." She knelt. "I was a fool, Mom. Forgive me." Forgiveness came quietly. She stayed. We ate together. We sewed together. She learned the machine's rhythm, pricking her fingers and laughing through tears. Then came revelations. The groom's mother, Imani Ellington, confessed. Decades ago, she had been my cruel client, the one who humiliated and underpaid me. Worse, she had loved my husband Kofi before me, carried unspoken guilt. She brought a letter he wrote before his death. Words of regret, forgiveness, and an envelope with modest savings so you never depend on pity again. And a journal. In it, Kofi had kept the red thread from Zuri's christening gown, the first thread I used after his death to keep us alive. "That thread," he wrote, "is why it was all worth it." We opened Hope's studio, my mother's name above the door, a place for women to mend fabric and souls. Zuri teaches embroidery now. Our granddaughter Nia plays with that same red thread, winding it around her wrist like a bracelet. Years later, my hands bear the fine scars of a lifetime. The studio hums with machines and laughter. Awards came, quiet recognition for proving dignity outlasts disdain. I frame the red thread on the wall. In the end, all wounds close if you hold the needle with love. Sometimes people ask if I would endure it all again. The rejection, the nights, the silence. Yes, because every tear taught me a stronger stitch. Every scorn reminded me not to beg for love. And every dawn proved that what is thrown away can be remade more beautiful. The red thread still binds us, mother, daughter, granddaughter. Invisible, unbreakable. A legacy not of wealth, but of hands that never stopped sewing. Years slipped by like loose threads on a spool. Hope's studio no longer felt like a small dream stitched in desperation. It had grown roots deep into the soil of Rahim Yar Khan's dusty lanes and beyond. Women came from nearby villages, some with calloused hands from cotton fields, others with city polish hiding quiet despair. They arrived carrying torn kurtis, faded dupatas, or simply broken spirits wrapped in silence. I taught them the same lesson my mother taught me: fabric doesn't judge. Neither should we. Zuri had become my right hand. No longer the distant daughter who once cringed at my simplicity, she now moved between tables with quiet authority, showing beginners how to tension the thread just right so it doesn't pucker or snap. Her own stitches were still imperfect. Fingers that once held champagne flutes now bore tiny silver scars from needles, but she wore them like badges. "Mom," she would say with a half smile, "I finally understand why you never complained when the machine jammed at 3 a.m. You weren't just fixing cloth. You were holding everything together." Our granddaughter Nia turned 12 that spring. She had my mother's eyes, deep watchful, and Zuri's quick laugh. Every afternoon after school she ran straight to the studio, apron already tied before her school bag hit the floor. She loved the red thread most. The framed one on the wall was sacred, untouchable, but I kept a small spool of identical crimson cotton in a tin box for her alone. "This is the family thread," I'd tell her. "It doesn't break easily, but when it does, we knot it stronger." One humid afternoon in June, Nia sat cross-legged on the cool tile floor, attempting her first solo project, a small handkerchief embroidered with a simple rose. The needle slipped. Blood bloomed on white cotton. She didn't cry. Instead, she looked up at me with those serious eyes and asked, "Dadi, does every scar mean something?" I knelt beside her, wiped the tiny bead of red with my thumb. "Every one, beta. This one means you were brave enough to try. The ones on my hands mean I never gave up. Yours will tell your own story someday." She nodded solemnly, then continued stitching, tongue caught between her teeth. Watching her, I felt time fold like pleats. My mother guiding my 12-year-old fingers, me guiding Zuri's, now Zuri and I guiding Nia's. The red thread passed from palm to palm across decades, invisible yet unbreakable. But peace, like fine silk, frays if not handled carefully. Trouble arrived quietly, as troubles often do. A young woman named Saima started coming to the studio 3 times a week. 28, divorced. With a 4-year-old son she carried on her hip like an apology. She spoke little at first, just asked for scraps to make school uniforms for the boy. Her stitches were tight, angry. Too much tension, fabric buckling under the pressure. One day the machine ate her thread and she slammed her palm on the table so hard the bobbin rattled. I pulled up a stool. "Breathe, Saima. The machine feels your anger before the cloth does." She stared at the crumpled seam, eyes filling. "I can't afford mistakes, Auntie. If I don't make his uniform perfect, the school will send him home again." "And then what?" "People already whisper, 'Divorced woman, can't even keep a husband, how will she raise a son?'" I took the fabric from her hands. "Let me show you something." I unpicked the bad stitches slowly, one by one. "See, nothing is ruined forever. We remove the pain, keep the shape, start fresh. That's all." She watched, then tried again. This time the seam lay flat. A small victory, but hers. Over weeks, Saima opened. Her husband had left for Dubai, promising money that never came. Her in-laws called her barons, though the child was his. She had sold her gold bangles to pay rent. Yet here she was learning applique roses because her son loved flowers. One evening she stayed late. Zuri had already locked the front door. Saima hesitated at the threshold. "Auntie, can I ask something personal?" "Ask. Your daughter, she changed. How? How do you forgive someone who threw your love in the dustbin?" I smiled faintly. I didn't forgive her right away. I forgave myself first, for thinking my worth depended on her approval. The rest followed. Saima nodded slowly. "I keep thinking if I had been better, prettier, quieter, maybe he wouldn't have left." "No," I said firmly. "His leaving was his failure, not yours. You are sewing your life back together. That is strength, not shame." She left with a small bundle of scraps and something lighter in her shoulders. But the real storm came months later. Imani Ellington passed quietly one winter morning. Her lawyer arrived at the studio with a thick envelope and a single handwritten note on cream paper. "Afia, I never deserved your grace, but you gave it anyway. Use this to keep the light on for as many women as possible. Tell Zuri and Nia that an old woman finally learned humility from the best teacher she ever had." With regret and gratitude, Imani inside. A bank draft large enough to buy the building we rented, pay off debts, and add a small library corner with sewing books in Urdu and English. Enough to secure Hope Studio for another generation. Zuri cried when she read it. She waited until the end to make it right. "She did what she could," I said. "Sometimes that's all any of us can do." We held a quiet memorial in the studio, tea, samosas, women sharing stories of second chances. Saima spoke last. "I came here thinking I was broken. Now I know broken things can still hold beauty." That night Nia asked me, "Dadi, was Imani auntie a bad person?" "She was a person." I answered. "She made mistakes. Big ones. But she tried to mend them, that's what matters." Nia wound the red thread around her finger. "Like us. Exactly like us." Then came the day everything tested us again. A letter arrived, not from a lawyer this time, but from a woman named Rabia. Postmarked Lahore, handwriting shaky but determined. "Dear Afia Auntie, I am Kofi's sister." Yes, the one who disappeared after his funeral. I was young, scared, ashamed. "Our family blamed you for not having a son, for not keeping him happy." I believed it then. I was wrong, I have cancer. Stage 4, I don't have long. Before I go, I need to tell you something Kofi told me the week before he died. He said he had written you a second letter, one he never posted because he was ashamed. He asked me to burn it. I didn't. I'm sending it now. Forgive an old coward. Arabia. 2 days later the envelope came. Inside a single folded sheet, dated 3 weeks before the accident. Afia, my heart, if you read this, know I was a coward. I loved another woman before you. Not with my soul, but with my weakness. Imani, I ended it before our Nika, but the guilt stayed. I never told you because I feared you'd leave. You never would have. That's why I don't deserve you. There's money, small, hidden in the old almari behind the blue fabric rolls. Use it for Zuri. Tell her father was flawed but loved her mother more than life. I kept the red thread you used for her first dress. It's in my toolbox. When you find it, remember you were always enough. I wasn't. Forgive me if you can. If not, at least know I died loving you. Kofi. I sat on the studio floor that night, letter in lap, red thread spool beside me. Zuri found me there at dawn. Mom. I handed her the letter without a word. She read, tears falling on ink already faded. He kept trying to tell us, she whispered. Even from the grave. I nodded. Sometimes love arrives late, but it arrives. We didn't speak much after that. Instead we worked, side by side. Needle in, needle out. The rhythm soothed what words couldn't. Seima finished her first full shower kameez that month. She brought her son to show us. He twirled in the new uniform, grinning. Amy made it! Seima looked at me with shining eyes. I want to teach here. Part-time, if you'll have me. You're already part of this place, I told her. Nia began a project of her own day, a wall hanging for the studio. Patches of fabric from every woman who'd passed through. Seima's rose scraps, Zuri's first clumsy sampler, even a piece from my original wedding veil. In the center, the red thread couched in gold so it gleamed. On the day we hung it, the studio filled with women. Lauder tea stories. Naya stood on a stool to pin the last corner. Deity, she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. This is our family tree. But not with names, with threads. I pulled her close. Yes, Beta, and every knot is a promise we kept. That evening, as the last light faded through the windows, Zuri and I sat alone with cups of chai. Mom, do you think we've done enough? I looked at the wall hanging, at the red thread glowing softly, at my daughter's face, lined now, but peaceful. We've done what mothers do, I said. We mended, we held. We passed the needle to the next hand. She rested her head on my shoulder. I love you. I know, I whispered. I always knew. Outside, the call to Maghrib rose over the city. Inside, the machines were silent, but the air hummed with something deeper, forgiveness, legacy, love stitched across time. The red thread still runs. Through my hands, Zuri's, Naya's. Through every woman who walks through our door thinking she's too broken to be beautiful. Time doesn't walk. It runs its fingers over the warp and weft of our lives, tightening some threads, fraying others. 10 more years have passed since Imani's passing, since Rabia's letter brought Kofi's final words into the light. Hope Studio is no longer just a building on a quiet street in Rahim Yar Khan. It's a beacon. The sign above the door, painted fresh every spring, still reads Hope Studio Har Silai Main Ek Kahani. I am 78 now. My hair is silver white, thin as spider silk. My hands tremble sometimes when I thread a needle, but the muscle memory remains. The calusas are softer, the scars paler, yet each one whispers its own memory. The night Zuri threw the dress away, the dawn I rescued it, the evening Nia first pricked her finger and asked if scars have meaning. Nia is 22, tall like her father whom she never met, with Zuri's determined jaw and my watchful eyes. She finished her degree in textile design from Lahore, scholarship funded, partly from Imani's bequest, partly from the small savings Kofi left hidden behind the blue fabric rolls. She could have stayed in the city, taken a job with a big fashion house, earned well, worn the kind of clothes her mother once envied. Instead, she came home. I don't want to design for runways. She told me the day she returned, suitcase still unpacked. I want to design for women who need clothes to feel strong again, like you did. Now she runs most of the daily classes. Zuri handles accounts and outreach, visiting villages, talking to women's groups, bringing in more students. Seima is a full-time teacher here. Her son is 12, the same age Nia was when she first asked about scars. He helps sweep the floor after classes, proud that his mother makes beautiful things for other aunties. The studio has expanded. We added a small shop at the front, ready-made kurtas, embroidered dupattas, baby clothes, all made by the women who learned here. Profits go back into materials, scholarships for girls who can't pay fees, and a tiny emergency fund for those facing sudden hardship. We call it the Red Thread Fund. No one asks questions when someone needs help, they just receive. But even in a place built on mending, new tears appear. Last monsoon season brought more than rain. A girl named Meher arrived one stormy afternoon soaked to the bone, clutching a plastic bag with a few sodden clothes and a photograph torn at the edges. 19 years old, eyes hollow, voice barely above a whisper. "My mother sent me," she said. "She said you help women who have nowhere else." I gave her dry clothes from our donation pile, hot chai, a quiet corner. She didn't speak for hours, just sat, staring at the wall hanging Nia made years ago, the one with patches from every woman's story and the red thread couched in gold at the center. When the rain eased, she finally opened her mouth. "My fiancé, he left after the engagement, said I wasn't modern enough. His family took back all the jewelry. My mother borrowed money for the function. Now collectors come every week. They threaten to take our house. I don't know how to face anyone." Zuri sat beside her. "You're safe here, Meher. No one will judge." Over the next weeks, Meher learned to sew. At first her hands shook so badly the needle slipped, but she persisted. She made a simple kurta for herself. Plain white cotton, but with delicate shadow work along the neckline. When she finished, she cried, not from sadness, but from the sight of something beautiful made by her own hands. One day she asked Nia, "How do you keep going when people say you're not enough?" Nia smiled gently. "You remember the women who came before you. My daddy once made a wedding dress that was thrown in the trash. She didn't stop sewing. She made it better, stronger. That's what we do here. We turn not enough into more than enough." Meher stayed 6 months. She paid off part of her mother's debt by selling the pieces she made. When she left, she hugged me so tightly I felt her heartbeat against mine. "Thank you," she whispered, "for showing me I can stitch my life back together." After she left, Nia turned to me. "Dadi, do you ever get tired of hearing the same stories?" I looked at the wall hanging, now fuller with new patches, Meher's white kurta scrap among them. "Tired? Sometimes. But never of the hope. Each one reminds me why I started." Then came the letter that almost unraveled everything. It arrived in a plain white envelope, no stamp, hand-delivered by a boy on a bicycle. Inside a single page, type, no signature. Afia Begum Hope Studio is built on stolen money. The funds from Imani Ellington were never hers to give freely. There are documents proving her family business cheated workers, including your late husband, for years. If you don't close the studio and return the money with interest, we will expose everything. Is built on lies. You have 1 month. Zuri read it first. Her face drained of color. "Mom, is this possible?" I sat heavily. Memories flooded back. Kofi's accident, the hospital envelope he never delivered, Imani's confession years later. Had there been more she never told? We called the lawyer who handled Imani's estate. He was retired now, but kind enough to meet us. After reading the letter, he shook his head. "This smells like blackmail." Imani's will was ironclad. She transferred funds legally. But there might be old grievances. Her family's textile mills had a bad reputation in the 80s and 90s. Underpayment, poor conditions. Your husband worked there briefly before the construction job. If someone kept records. Nia, listening quietly, spoke up. "Then we face it, we don't hide. If there's truth in it, we make it right. But we don't close." Not after everything. That night we gathered. Zuri, Nia, Sema, a few senior students. I told them the letter, no secrets. One by one they spoke. "Saimai, this place saved me. If someone wants to take it, they'll have to go through us." An older woman, who'd learned here after losing her husband. "We've all been cheated before. We won't let it happen again." Nia stood. Dadi started this with nothing but a sewing machine and love. We continue it the same way. We decided no closing. Instead, we would investigate quietly. Nia used her college contacts to search old labor records. Zuri reached out to women who'd worked in those mills decades ago. Weeks passed. Tension hung like humidity before rain. Then another letter came, this one signed. From a man named Tariq Ahmed, former manager at Ellington Mills. "Dear Afia, I wrote the first letter. I was angry. My pension was cut years ago, and I blamed the family. But after watching your studio from afar, seeing what you've built, I was wrong. The money Imani gave was clean. She sold her personal jewelry to raise it, separate from the business. I apologize. Burn this if you want, but know that your work matters." Tariq relief washed over us like cool water. We kept the letter, framed it beside the wall hanging, not as shame, but as another knot in the thread, proof that even anger can be mended. The studio continued stronger. We started a small archive, oral histories from the women. Recordings of their stories, transcribed, bound in simple books, so no one forgets where we came from, Nia said. Last week Nia came to me with news. Daddy, I'm getting married. My heart stuttered. Joy, fear, memory, all at once. To whom? A boy from Moulton. He teaches at a government school. Humble family. He saw my work online, came to visit the studio last month. We talked for hours about threads, about second chances. She showed me the ring, simple silver band with a tiny red stone. I want you to make my wedding dress, she said softly. Not fancy. Just honest. Like the one you made for Ami. Tears came then quiet, grateful ones. Of course, Beta. We began together. White cotton base, layers of soft net, embroidery in crimson and gold, roses, knots, tiny red threads weaving through like veins of memory. Inside the lining a patch from my original gown, one from Zuri's restored dress, one from Meher's kurta. And in the hem, a loop of the original red thread Kofi kept. On her wedding day, small and simple in our local masjid ground, Nia walked toward her groom wearing the dress we made. When she reached me for the embrace before the nikah, she whispered, Daddy, this isn't just a dress, it's us. All of us. I touched her cheek. Yes, and the thread holds. Later, at the small reception in the studio courtyard, lanterns, chai, laughter, Zuri pulled me aside. Mom, look at her. She's happy. Truly, I nodded. She learned from the best. As night fell, I sat alone for a moment on the old stool by the machine. The weir was silent now, but the air still carried the scent of cotton and coffee. I looked at the wall hanging, now twice as full, patches overlapping like generations. The red thread gleamed under the light. I touched it gently. Thank you, I whispered. To my mother, to Kofi, to Amani, to every woman who'd passed through these doors. Thik hai Muhammad Bai, apart for haini kaya hissa our gear emotional, our reflective high. Walked up our age Nikal Chuka high, part 3 bad 810 sale. Afia abbohadomer ki high, like in spirit of bly masboot. Nia ki shadi ki bad nay chapters kulti hain. Nay generation challenges final reflections are a cake peaceful, hopeful enjo puri series co-rap karta high. Word count law 3000 exact 2985 style consistent raka high poetic metaphors family bonds red thread kasilsila. The red thread part 40. The final hem the years after Nia's wedding felt like the gentle easing of a tight seam. No more sudden rips, no more frantic unpicking. Just the steady, quiet rhythm of daily life continuing to stitch itself forward. I turned 85 last winter. The doctor says my heart is tired but steady. Like an old machine that still turns but needs oil now and then. I spend most days in the rocking chair by the studio window, watching sunlight fall across the tables where young hands move needles in and out. My fingers no longer hold the needle for long, but they remember every motion. Zuri brings me tea at exactly 4 p.m., the way I used to bring it to my mother. Nia, now a mother herself, comes with little Ayesha, who is 5 and already insists on helping Dottie. Ayesha has the same curious eyes Nia had at that age. She climbs onto my lap, traces the scars on my hands with her tiny finger, and asks the same questions. Daddy, yet Dagkon Hain. These are stories, Mary Jan. I tell her. Each one is a time when life hurt, but we kept going. She nods seriously, then picks up a scrap of red thread from the tin and winds it around her wrist like a bracelet. Ye thread muja strong banaiga. I smile. Beta. Bahut strong. Hope Studio is thriving in ways I never imagined. Nia has turned the back room into a small design lab, computers for patterns, a digital embroidery machine donated by a Lahore NGO, but she never lets the machines replace hands. Technology helps, she says, but soul comes from fingers. The archive of oral histories has grown into a published book, Saleh and Kikahanian, sold in local bookstores and online. Proceeds fund more scholarships. Women from as far as Karachi and Peshawar send their daughters here for summer workshops. Sama's son, now 20, is studying engineering in Moulton. He comes back every Eid with stories in a fat envelope for the Red Thread Fund. Amy taught me, he says, that hard work isn't just money. It's dignity. Meher returned last year, not broken this time, but glowing. She married a kind man who owns a small bookstore. They have a daughter now. She brought fabric from her village, hand-woven a drac, and we made a quilt together, patching old stories with new ones. But even in this gentle season, shadows find their way. One crisp October morning, a woman in her late 50s walked in. Gray streaks in her hair, expensive shawl over simple salwar, eyes that held both pride and something haunted. She introduced herself as Lila Ellington, Imani's younger sister, the one no one had mentioned in years. I came to see what my sister helped build, she said quietly, and to apologize for what our family once took. She carried a small wooden box. Inside, old photographs, ledgers from the mills, and a sealed envelope addressed to me in Imani's handwriting, written weeks before she passed, but never delivered. Zuri and Nia joined us in the quiet corner. Lila opened the envelope. Afia, if you're reading this, I've gone. I wanted to tell you more, but courage failed me at the end. The mills my mother ran did hurt people, including your Kofi. He left because he refused to stay silent about the wages. I knew, I said nothing then. But you forgave what I never asked forgiveness for. Your studio is the opposite of everything we stood for. Keep it, grow it, let it be the amends I couldn't make in life. The box has deeds to a small plot of land near your studio, enough for expansion. Use it or sell it for the fund. No strings, only gratitude. Imani. Lila looked at me with wet eyes. She talked about you often in her last months. Said you were the only woman who ever taught her real humility. I took her hand. Tell your children the truth, not to punish them but to free them. That's all any of us can do. She stayed for tea. Told stories of Imani as a girl. Spoiled, lonely, always trying to fill emptiness with things. When she left, she hugged me. Awkwardly at first, then tightly. Thank you for not hating us, she whispered. I watched her go, then opened the box fully. The deeds were real. We used part to build a small hostel upstairs, rooms for women from far villages who stay for weeks to learn. The rest went to the fund. That night Nia sat with me under the lantern light. Daddy, do you think forgiveness ever ends? I looked at the wall hanging. Now so full it covers half the wall, red thread still shining at the center like a heartbeat. It doesn't end, Beta. It just becomes part of the fabric. Stronger because of the men's. Ayesha ran in then, holding a tiny embroidered bookmark she'd made. Red thread roses on white cotton. For you, Daddy, she said proudly. I pinned it to my dupatta. Perfect. Months passed quietly. My strength faded slowly, like dye washing out in rain. I spent more time in the chair, listening to the machines, the laughter, the soft Urdu and Punjabi mixing with the whir of needles. One evening in early spring, the whole family gathered. Zuri, her husband, who'd become part of the studio routine, fixing machines and making chai, Nia and her husband Ayesha, Saima, me, her visiting with her daughter. They brought food, stories, old photographs. Nia knelt beside me. Daddy, we want to do something. A celebration. For you. For everything. I shook my head. No need for fanfare. Just keep sewing. That's celebration enough. But they insisted. A small event in the courtyard. Lanterns, music, women from all the years coming together. They called it Silayan Kajashan, Festival of Stitches. On that day, under a sky streaked with pink and gold, Nia stood on a low platform. This place began with one woman, one machine, one broken heart. My daddy didn't just sew cloth. She sewed hope. She taught us that what is thrown away can be remade more beautiful. That scars are not flaws. They're proof of survival. People clapped softly. Then Zuri spoke. Mom, you once said love is the knots we tie when the thread breaks. You've tied enough for all of us. Ayesha ran up, placed a small framed photo on the table. Me at 30 sewing by lamplight, the red thread in my hand. For the wall? She said. I couldn't speak. Tears came, quiet, grateful. Later, when the guests had gone and the lanterns dim, Nia helped me to bed. She tucked the red thread spool beside my pillow. Keep it close, she whispered. I held her hand. The thread is already in you, Beta. In Ayesha, in every woman who walks through that door. It doesn't need me to hold it anymore. She kissed my forehead. Rest, Daddy. We've got the needle now. I closed my eyes that night, listening to the faint hum of the city outside. Rayim Yarkhan breathing, living, mending. In the quiet, I felt them all. My mother guiding my first stitch, Kofi keeping the red thread safe, Imani finding peace at the end, Zuri coming home, Nia carrying the legacy forward, Ayesha just beginning. The red thread stretched across time, thin, strong, unbroken. I smiled into the darkness. No final stitch needed. The hem was already perfect.